I stood at the edge of their perfectly trimmed driveway, suitcase in one hand and a smile plastered across my face that I was desperately trying to keep real. This was supposed to be a happy day, a new beginning. I had sold my house, my home, of 42 years to move in with my son Mark and his family. He'd said, "Of course, Mom, it'll be good for the kids to be around you, and we'll all save money this way." I believed him. Mark opened the door with his usual distracted expression. He glanced behind him, then back at me. "Hey, Mom, come in." No hug, no warm welcome, just a nod like I was the mailman dropping off a package inside. Tina was on the phone. She waved at me, didn't even pause her conversation. I caught the tail end of it. "Yeah, she's here now. Just hope she's not too fussy about things." Tried not to let it bother me. They were probably just adjusting. It's not easy having another person in your home, especially someone old like me. That's what people think. Once you're over 70, you become an inconvenience. "I brought some muffins," I said, holding out the small container I baked the night before. Banana walnut, Mark's childhood favorite. "Oh," he said, barely glancing at them. "You didn't have to do that." They sat unopened on the counter. I looked around the house, modern, spotless, cold. No toys in sight, no photos of family on the walls, just abstract art and a sense of silence. Not a home, really. Just a very clean place to live. So, I smiled, trying to shift the mood. "Which room will I be in?" Mark looked sheepish. "Yeah, about that. We actually set up the garage for you. It's clean and everything. Don't worry." I blinked. "The garage?" He raised a hand quickly. "We needed the guest room for Princess. She doesn't sleep well anywhere else. She gets anxious." Princess was their golden retriever. I loved animals. I really did. But my heart dropped like a stone. "Oh, I see." I tried to smile. "I'm sure she does." I wheeled my suitcase through the hallway, past the room I thought would be mine, now complete with a pink dog bed, 2 bowls, and a name tag on the door. Princess's Suite, it read. No joke. Mark led me to the garage. We put in a cot and a small table. There's a little space heater, too, if it gets chilly. It smelled faintly of motor oil and mildew. The cot was small and creaked when I touched it. A thin wool blanket lay on top. He stood awkwardly at the door. "Well, I'll let you get settled." He left. I looked at the uninsulated walls, the flickering overhead bulb, the cobweb in the corner. Then I sat on the cot, closed my eyes, and let the silence wrap around me like a punishment. No one had said, "We're glad you're here." Not even the grandkids. Not even Mark. That night, I listened through the garage door to the laughter and clinking of plates from the kitchen. I stared at the ceiling, biting my lip to keep from crying. I wasn't going to be dramatic. I wasn't going to complain, but in that moment, I felt like I had truly become invisible. Perfect. Here is. The first night in the garage was humbling. I used to have a bedroom full of lace curtains and warm yellow lamplight. Quilt I stitched myself. Framed photos of Mark as a baby, a young boy, a man. All gone now, boxed up or sold when I gave up my home to be closer to family. Now I had a cot with a hollow center, one thin blanket, and the sound of the water heater groaning in the corner. The concrete floor held the day's chill like a grudge, and the little heater Mark had mentioned. It sparked when I plugged it in and refused to turn on again. I wrapped my cardigan tighter around me and lay down, staring at the exposed beams above. A single bulb buzzed overhead, but I couldn't bring myself to switch it off. Darkness made the place feel even more like a tomb. That's when I heard voices from the other side of the door, the kitchen. "I guess she's too old to be living alone anyway," Tina said, her voice casual like she was discussing dinner. Mark replied, laughing, "Yeah, but man, she's already driving me nuts. This whole idea was yours. She's just here so we don't look bad. Hopefully not for long." There was silence, then laughter. Their laughter. I turned my face into the pillow and willed myself not to cry. I was not going to be a burden. I had already told myself that 100 times. But how do you explain the ache of watching your own son treat you like a problem to manage? The next morning I woke to the sound of barking, loud, sharp, entitled. Princess was scratching at the door to the garage, no doubt wondering why I was in her house. I opened the door to find Tina already in the kitchen, in silk pajamas, sipping green juice. She didn't look at me. "Good morning," I said, smiling. "Weekly dot," she sipped. "Morning. You'll want to stay out of the living room. We're having someone over later." "I made muffins yesterday," I said, hopeful. "Banana walnut?" "Ooh," she said. "The kids don't really eat that stuff." I stood there for a second, unsure what to do. Then I heard small feet thundering down the stairs. "Grandma." I turned, heart lifting, but it was short-lived. Mia and Lucas. Their 2 kids dashed past me without a second glance and ran to the dog. "Princess," they squealed, hugging her while she barked happily. Not a hello, not even a glance in my direction, so I made myself useful. I cleaned the counters, swept the floor, watered the plants. Tina watched me from time to time but never said thank you. At lunch, she made sandwiches and handed out plates to everyone. But Mark came in halfway through the meal. "Mom, could you grab some napkins?" I nodded and fetched them. No one noticed I hadn't eaten that night. It rained hard. The wind howled outside like it knew I wasn't supposed to be here. I lay curled in bed, wrapped in my cardigan and blanket, trying to ignore the water pooling. Slowly, under the garage door. I stuffed an old towel beneath it, but it didn't help much. By morning, the hem of my skirt was damp, and the blanket smelled like mildew. I thought about the dog's room, the plush bed, the space heater that actually worked, the white noise machine they used to calm her nerves. I wondered what it would feel like to be cherished like that later that day. I met Margot. She lived a few blocks down, someone I hadn't seen in nearly a decade. We ran into each other while I was out walking, trying to clear my head. "Helen." "My word, I didn't know you moved here," she said, wrapping me in a hug I hadn't known I needed. We talked for nearly an hour. She looked into my eyes and touched my hand gently. "You don't look well, dear," she said. "They're draining your light." I blinked. "I'm fine, just adjusting." "You've always been strong," she said. "But don't let that strength become your cage." I didn't answer her then, but her words stayed with Med. "Raining your light." It was true. Hadn't laughed, smiled, or been seen in days. Not really. That night in the garage, I took out my old phone and scrolled back through old messages. One caught my Aja saved message from my late husband, written years before. "You're stronger than anyone I know." But strength isn't just surviving. Sometimes it's knowing when to leave. I stared at that line until my screen went black. Maybe it was time I started listening. Absolutely. Here's the third day felt like an echo of the last. I had always believed that love's lovely somewise unconditional. That if you gave your all to your child, they'd never forget it. Never throw it back at you, like expired leftovers. But by now, I was beginning to realize I was wrong. That morning, I woke up shivering. Again, the space heater was still dead. I had laid cardboard under the cot to help with the cold, but it didn't help much. My knees ached, my back hurt, my heart felt numb. I walked into the kitchen, hoping, just hoping for some sliver of kindness. A smile, a good morning, even the dog wagging her tail would have done. Instead, I found Tina at the stove. Her hair was curled, her phone was balanced against a canister, recording her cooking. "Are you filming something?" I asked gently. She glanced at me. "Yeah, it's for my cooking blog." "Please don't walk in the background. It throws off the aesthetic." I paused. Of course. I backed away, back into the hallway, and returned to the garage like a scolded dog. But I wouldn't give up. Not yet. So I went back later, after the filming ended, and made pancakes. Blueberry ones. Mark used to beg for them every Saturday morning when he was 12. He'd sit at the counter with maple syrup in one hand, always licking the spoon. I cooked silently, stacking them high. The smell filled the kitchen. Warm, sweet, familiar. The kids walked in first. Mia sniffed. "Oh, what's that?" "Blueberry pancakes," I said with a soft smile. "Grandma's special." Mia wrinkled her nose. "Ooh, they're not gluten-free, are they?" Tina followed behind. "Please don't let them eat those. They'll get bloated before dance class." I forced a smile. I didn't know about the allergy. "They're not allergic," Tina said sharply. "They're sensitive. Please don't undermine their diet." The pancakes sat on the plate, untouched, growing cold. Mark walked in next. "Morning," he muttered. "Good morning," I replied. "I made you blueberry pancakes, your favorite." He looked at them, then poured himself cereal. "Thanks, but I'm off carbs for a bit." A part of me cracked inside, the kind that remembers staying up late sewing his Halloween costumes by hand. The kind that never slept until I knew he was home safe. No one ate the pancakes. Not a single one. Later that evening, we all sat at the table for dinner. Or rather, they sat. I stood nearby, unsure if I was supposed to join. A casserole was passed around, forks clinking, laughter echoing. Finally, I walked over. "Oh," Tina said, blinking. "We didn't set a place for you. Sorry, there's probably a plate in the dishwasher." I nodded and grabbed one for myself. But by the time I sat down, the conversation had moved on. They didn't notice I hadn't served myself. Or maybe they just didn't care. "You know," Mark said, chewing, "maybe we should look into, I don't know, some kind of senior community for Mom. It might be good for her. More social." Tina sipped her wine. "Totally agree. She needs people her own age, like bridge clubs or whatever they do." "I'm right here," I said quietly. They paused. "Barely." Tina waved her fork like it was nothing. "We're just talking about your well-being, Helen." I looked at my empty plate. I wasn't even hungry anymore. After dinner, I sat on the porch steps. The stars were out. Neighborhood was quiet, and a breeze brushed past me like it was apologizing for everything I was too proud to say aloud. I thought about the times Mark had gotten sick as a boy, how I'd sit up all night holding a cold cloth to his forehead. I remembered scraping together money for his college books, even when it meant skipping meals. I remembered lying to him about how well I was doing financially, just so he'd never feel guilty for living his own life. And now I was a placeholder, an embarrassment, an unwanted shadow they couldn't wait to shake off. When I walked back inside, Tina was pouring wine into crystal glasses. She didn't offer me any. I retreated to the garage. Smelled like wet cardboard and disappointment. That night, I lay awake wondering how long it would take them to actually ask me to leave. Or worse, how long it would take before I asked myself. But deep down, I already knew. Of course. I woke up on the morning of my 73rd birthday with aching knees, a sore neck, and the strange hope that maybe, just maybe, someone in that house would remember. Birthdays were never a big production in my life. I never needed balloons or candles or fuss. But I always made sure to bake Mark a cake, no matter how busy I was. I still remembered his favorite chocolate fudge with peanut butter frosting. Even when he turned 35 and said he was too old for cake, I left one at his doorstep anyway. So yes, I hoped. Quietly, foolishly. The garage was especially cold that morning. A draft slipped in through a crack under the side door. I put on my nicest sweater, the blue one with little white buttons down the front. It used to be Mark's favorite. When I wore it, I brushed my hair carefully, applied a dab of pink lipstick I hadn't touched in years, and even pinned on my silver brooch. It had belonged to my mother. She used to say, "Wear something that reminds you of who you are even when others forget." At 8 a.m., I stepped into the kitchen. Tina was making smoothies, the blender roaring as she shouted instructions to the kids. Mark was flipping through his phone at the table. No one looked up. I waited, stood there, silent, watching. "Morning," I said finally. Mark mumbled, "Hey, Mom." I smiled. "It's a nice day." "Sure," he said. Don't forget we've got people coming over later. Try not to be in the way, all right? Course, I replied. My voice cracked. I hoped they didn't notice. I waited until they all left the house for their errands, then quietly opened the fridge, pulled out the leftover muffins from 2 days ago, and placed one on a napkin. My birthday breakfast, I sat on the garage step and ate in silence. No text, no card, not even a mention. It wasn't just that they forgot. It was that I had become so small in their lives, I didn't even exist as a date worth remembering at noon. I heard the doorbell ring. Company.music blared. Laughter filled the air. They were hosting a barbecue. Strangers flooded the backyard people I didn't know. I peeked through the slats in the fence. They were drinking, dancing, passing around appetizers. Not once did anyone invite me. I crept back inside, trying not to be seen. I didn't want to embarrass them. I didn't want Tina to say, "Can you give us some space?" Again, back in the garage, I picked up my knitting. Hands shaking, I tried to finish the scarf I'd started a month ago. It was supposed to be, for Mia, purple with tiny pink stripes. She liked pink once, maybe still did. I wasn't sure anymore. A few hours later, I heard the sliding glass door open. Tina's voice drifted through. "She's in the garage. She doesn't come out much. It's just easier that way." I set the yarn down slowly. That was the moment. Not the missed birthday. Not the empty seat at the table. That moment hearing her say it like I was a forgotten coat in the closet was what finally made the tears fall. Not many, just a few. But they were enough. I reached into my small suitcase, the one I kept near the cot, and pulled out my photo album. The edges were fraying now. I flipped through the pages. Mark's first day of kindergarten. Mark holding up his first day on a spelling test. Mark at his wedding with me standing beside him, beaming. And on the last page, my favorite photo. Mark asleep on my chest at age 4. I remember that night vividly. He had a fever. I stayed up the entire night holding him close, humming softly. Until he finally stopped shivering, I closed the album. My hands were steady now. That night, once everyone had gone to bed, I stood in the garage and whispered to the dark, "I am not a burden." It didn't matter if no one had said it to me. I needed to say it to myself. I took out my phone and opened the message I'd saved from my late husband again. "You're stronger than anyone I know, but strength isn't just surviving. Sometimes it's knowing when to leave." I stared at those words for a long time, and I knew what I had to do. Absolutely. I woke before the sun the next morning. Sky was still bruised with night, and the house was silent. Not even Princess stirred. I didn't rush. There was no panic, no dramatic exit. Just the quiet resolve of a woman who had been pushed one step too far. I folded my blanket, stacked the extra towels neatly, and placed the knitting needles back in my suitcase. Every movement was deliberate. I was not going to leave as the broken old woman they treated like clutter. I was going to leave with grace. I glanced at the dog's room as I passed it once meant to be mine. Princess slept on her expensive orthopedic bed tucked beneath a cashmere throw. The custom name sign still hung on the door. I walked into the kitchen. No one was up yet. Tina's lemon water pitcher sat on the counter, and Mark's phone charger was plugged in by the island. Everything was perfectly placed, controlled, sterile, except for the letter I was about to leave. I sat down at the counter with a pen and a blank notepad. I took a deep breath and wrote, "To Mark and Tina, thank you for giving me clarity. You gave my room to a dog. You gave my seat at the table to strangers. You gave my birthday to yourselves. But most importantly, you gave me the final push I needed to remember who I am. This was never about space, or princess, or gluten. This was about worth. And somewhere along the way, you decided I had none. So I'll make it easy for you. I'm leaving. You don't have to worry about me being in the way anymore. You won't have to lower your voices or clear a spot. Won't have to pretend. Oh, and about the house. Money, I told you I had transferred it all. I didn't. I never finalized the deal in your name. Safe with me. As it should be. Please don't call. I need air. And you need reflection, Mom. I folded the letter and placed it right on Princess's satin pillow. There was no suitcase in hand as I left. It's just a single duffel, my purse, and my photo album. The taxi pulled up at exactly 6:15 a.m. I gave the driver the address of a small, furnished apartment complex 3 towns over the one Margot had told me about. A short-term senior rental, quiet, with a garden in the back. As the house faded in the rearview mirror, I felt no regret, just release. When they found the letter, I imagine it wasn't immediate panic. It wasn't worth panic in their eyes. But by the afternoon, my phone had rung 8 times. I didn't answer. Mark left voicemails. Mom. What do you mean you didn't transfer the money? Another? Mom, can we just talk? Why would you write that? Why would you leave like that? Tina's was the most honest. I told you this would happen. It's never been stable. I turned the phone off that evening in my new apartment. I sat in the sunroom with a cup of tea and watched the birds gather around the feeder. Margot had dropped off a lemon pie and a small bouquet of violets. For your birthday, she said, hugging me. It's not too late to celebrate yourself. It was the first hug I'd received in months. It's the first gift. The first warmth. And as I looked around, not at a mansion, not at a lavish room, but at peace, I finally exhaled. Not in anger, not in pain, in freedom. Great here is the days that followed were still, not empty still. For the first time in years, I woke up without bracing myself. No sideways glances, no whispered jokes in the kitchen. No hushed conversations behind closed doors with my name dropped like an inconvenience. In the quiet of my new apartment, I rediscovered the luxury of my own breath. Margot came by most mornings with her cane clicking against the tile floor, always, holding a bag of something, muffins, jam, the local newspaper. We'd sit on the small patio in our robes, hair unbrushed, talking about everything and nothing. Her laughter filled the space like sunlight. Doesn't it feel strange? She asked one morning, buttering toast, not having to tiptoe around. Your own blood. I smiled. It doesn't feel strange. Feels like healing. My phone remained off for days, but on the 5th day I turned it on. I was curious, not for them, but for myself. I needed to know how desperate they would become once their ATM stopped working. The inbox was full. 7 missed calls from Mark. 3 voicemails from Tina. 1 unknown number. I listened. Mom, please, I'm sorry. Tina and we weren't thinking straight. Can we just talk? Don't have to come back. Just let me know you're safe. Another, this isn't funny anymore. You said the house was already transferred. You lied. You can't do that, Mom. That's financial manipulation. Tina's voice cold and clipped. Honestly, if this is your idea of a punishment, congratulations. You've proven your point. But acting like a victim when we tried to help you is pathetic. I didn't flinch. Then came the final voicemail, one that made me pause. Hey, this is Claire. I'm, your granddaughter. I got your number from Dad's phone. I don't really know what happened, but I remember when you used to braid my hair and sneak me butterscotch candies at bedtime. I don't. No, if you want to hear from me. But I wanted to say, happy birthday, Grandma, I love you. I listened to that one 3 times, Claire. My sweet, soft-eyed Claire. I replied just to her. Thank you, my darling. I miss you too. When you're ready to hear the truth, I'll be here. I didn't expect a reply. She was young, impressionable, probably caught between loyalty and confusion. But just knowing one heart in that house hadn't hardened completely was enough. A week later, I found myself walking through the community center's open mic night. Seniors in cardigans and orthopedic shoes lined up for poetry readings and saxophone solos. When I was nudged to join, I politely declined, till they called my name, thanks to Margot. I stood awkwardly at first, The mic squealed. My knees trembled. But then I looked out at the audience. Women who had been dismissed, men who had been forgotten. People who knew too well the sting of being invisible in their own families. And I began. My name is Helen. I recently moved here after being told quite literally that a dog outranked me in my own child's home. A chuckle. Then laughter. They fed me table scraps on my birthday, then toasted to themselves, while their guest of honor sat in the kitchen. Now full laughter. But I'm not bitter. I'm blessed. Because they gave me something I never would have taken on my own. The courage to walk away. By the end, people were clapping. Not because it was poetic, but because it was true. When I stepped off the stage, Margot was waiting with a grin. You're officially a legend, she said. I squeezed her hand. I'm officially free, I replied. And in that moment, I knew. My story wasn't a tragedy. It was a beginning. Here is the final chapter. 2 weeks later, I received a formal letter from my lawyer. Thick, cream-colored paper, the kind that means business. Subject, trust distribution notification. I smiled before I even opened it. Months. I go. Before I sold the old house, I'd asked my attorney to draft a clause in the trust. It stated that if I ever felt pressured, manipulated, or emotionally abused by my beneficiaries, I could pause the inheritance distribution indefinitely. At the time, it felt dramatic, extreme, but something in my gut told me to prepare. Now, I was grateful I had. The clause had been activated. Mark and Tina would receive nothing unless I chose to reinstate it, which, given the current state of things, was unlikely. But Claire, sweet Claire, wasn't listed in the original document, but I had since amended it. Quietly, she'd now inherit the lion's share of what was left, the savings, the estate investments, the rights to publish my journals if she ever wanted. 2, I hadn't heard back from her since that one message, but that didn't matter. Seeds take time. That's Sunday. The community center held a little gathering for seniors who had started over after turning 70. A photographer came by. There were stories shared, tears shed, and lots of tea. When it was my turn to speak, I brought a small framed photo of myself, taken just that week. Hair pulled back in a bun, a soft purple cardigan, a tiny smile, and eyes that finally looked alive. Sometimes, I told the crowd, you don't realize you are being erased until you finally see yourself again. My family didn't hurt me with fists. They hurt me with silence, with empty seats, with shallow praise and deep neglect. But I want you all to know, it's never too late to rewrite the ending. You are not a burden. You are not useless. You are not too old. You are still here. And that means something. Standing ovation. My first in 73 years. That night, as I sat watching the rain tap softly against the windows, my phone buzzed. A text from Claire. Grandma, can I come visit you next weekend? I've been thinking a lot. I read your message over and over again. I want to talk. I want to understand. Tears filled my eyes. Not the kind that sting, the kind that wash you clean. I texted back, yes, darling. I'll have your favorite lemon cake waiting. And that's how it ends. Not with revenge. Not with bitterness, but with quiet strength. With reclaimed dignity. With a chair at my own table, finally pulled out for someone who wanted to sit with me, not above me, because in the end, the best kind of justice is not showing them pain. It's showing them what peace looks like without them.